But yeah, so this is the render that we'll be creating today. We can always add in a camera, which is usually pretty useful for, just setting up the orientation of how we want everything. So if we just drop our camera here, and then we can go ahead and add in a background image, we can display our reference photo that we have, and we can kind of use this as like our guide moving forward with how we're doing everything. And we can leave this at like a lower opacity, but we're just going to use this as our reference over here. The other thing I like to do inside of my camera settings over here is under viewport display, just increasing the pass-through to be completely black, so that way we're only seeing what we are working on. It's also important what lens we're using. This is using a 50, but let's just try something like a 42. Here's an easy way of doing it. We'll add in a plane. We'll extrude it by the z-axis, 1.7. There you go. So now this is the height of 1.7. Okay, so we'll do the same thing again with the correct height. Let's take this whole thing now. We only need it from here and over. I find that, just creating like that pizza shape on the edge here is really worth it, because then we're not, using a bunch of land that we're not going to see whatsoever. Okay, so that's one of our spheres. We can, I think one of the important stuff to do before we start making a crap ton of spheres, let's actually do the shading on one sphere. So that way we have it kind of created, and then when we start to duplicate everything around, we've got it. So we've got a memory orb. Let's start actually creating some collections. Now we've got ourselves a single sphere that we can use later inside of our kind of particle system setup. There's a couple things I want to do now that we've got everything a little bit more organized over here. Let's create camera. I'm going to create another new collection called lighting. And then inside of our regular lighting here is where we'll put all of our lighting details later. But let's go ahead and work on our memory orb. There will be a couple things about this memory orb that we need to think about. First of all, let's create a new material now. And this new material we'll call outer surface, I think. Orb, and then we'll call this outer surface. Surface. There we go. So we've got our orb outer surface, and then let's go into edit mode here, and then let's just go to side view real quick so we can easily see this in wireframe mode. And I'm going to just duplicate everything and then scale it down ever so slightly. Now, on our interior that we have here, let's go ahead and create a new material that we will call orb glow. Not quite sure about this yet, but let's go ahead and just make it its own separate object. We'll delete the outer surface, and so that way we've got glow, and then we've got our outer surface that we have here. On our visibility settings here, we want to make sure that we are inside of cycles, guys. So swap over to cycles, use GPU, and then inside of our visibility settings, let's turn off shadow. Now, with our outer and inner selected, let's go ahead and add in our nodes. So I'm going to set this to go view this object real quick, and we'll go ahead and put it in render view so we can see what we're doing here. The next thing we're going to do real quick, let's go to HDRI Haven and load in a nice HDRI that we can just use for visibility right now. So, and inside of our environmental settings, let's set this to environmental texture. And I'm going to go and open that up real quick. Booyah! Now we've got ourselves a nice texture to work with. And this will work really nicely for, seeing our reflections and seeing how our light is interacting with everything. The other thing I really want to do real quick is let's just roughly create the ground, because that's also going to really depend on how the rest of the environment or how the rest of the sphere is kind of interacting with everything. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And then if I select this guy, let's go ahead and add a subdivide surface. Okay, for this outer, let's go ahead and swap this over to our shader editor. Here's what I'm thinking. Let's do glass, just use straight up glass BSDF. And then let's go ahead and make sure that roughness is set to nothing. And then our IOR, we'll just have that set to a 1 right now. Or a 1.1. Something to give us that reflection that we're getting there. Now for our environment, let's just go ahead and lessen the amount of light that we have on our environment that's going on here. And then let's go ahead and add in a light, specifically an area light. Grab this area light, and then we'll go ahead and scale that down on our individual ordinate. Let's grab this inner here, and we're just gonna, for right now, if we set this to just a really dark color, we can see our reflections a little bit easier. We'll see this really ugly square that we've got going on. If we select our light that is shining onto our sphere here, we can change this from square to something like a disc, which will give us a circular kind of reflection. And then we can change the size of that to get a larger size disc over here. So I might just increase the brightness overall. Now our inner ball that we have going on, we're going to want to have a different texture on it. And we can do this, several different ways, but we're going to try to do this procedurally as much as possible. So let's go ahead and go back to our environment here and just increase the light to like a 0.5 or maybe even a 1, I think. And then on the inside, this base color is the thing that we're going to want to mess around with the most. So first of all, we can increase our roughness all the way on the inside of our ball here because we don't need the specularity on the inside of the ball since we have this outer kind of a reflective surface that we're using. This is the same type of concept that we would use if we were trying to do like eyeballs or something like that. So let's use a glass BSDF to start with, and we're going to be messing around with this color material. And then we want the roughness on this one to be a little bit higher since this is going to be the interior of our glass ball. And then we can also have this IQR, which is actually changing the amount of the refraction on the inside of the sphere. So this is something that we can mess around with in the future. We're going to use an RGB node at this point to kind of get the color that we want. I'm thinking this first one, obviously, that we're doing on the ground is going to have that purplish color. So let's go for that. Let's try to make a purple. And then let's use a mix color node. And we're going to plug this into the A and then our FAC here into the factor. And that's already going to give us some different variations of our RGB. But we can also use a RGB curves and plug this over here into the color as well. And let's take this and then plug it into the B input. And now if we just have this slightly darker, we can get some different variations in our sphere. Thinking about changing the scale here to something a little bit larger. Okay, great. So that gives us that one shade. I'm thinking we can just duplicate our work here. So let's just go ahead and duplicate this other noise texture all the way up here. And then we can change the offset now to, or not offset, sorry. We can change, let's add a map. I think that's actually what we need to do here. So let's change the rotation here to something like that. And then we'll increase the black a little bit and remove a little bit of the white. This is going to give us another matte that we can use on top of this other matte that we have. So we've got this guy and now we've got this guy. And we're going to do the same thing that we had with the RGB curves here. Let's grab that. We're going to actually take it out of our other RGB curve that we have here. So it's an equally distanced, darker value that we can then mix into a different location. So we've got this mix node here, put that into the A input. And then with the B input, we'll take it from this other RGB curve and then take this color value and plug that into the factor. And then now we've got a little bit more variation inside of our image. Yeah, let's try that actually. So we'll do object info. And then we do have random here. He says random and then color ramp set to constant. Color ramp set to constant. So that's going to give me a black value. Also, in the color ramp, you can make multiple stops with multiple colors. Oh, so black, this would in turn actually be whatever this purplish value is. Add another stop. This could be a red. Technically, I'm doing this incorrect because there's only like, what, 4 emotions, and each of them are supposed to be the color of like what they're doing. Okay, great. So now we've got this color here. Let's plug this color into our RGB color there. And then we plug this color into... Where else are we using this? Into the A input? Yeah, so we'll plug that into the A input. So now we could delete that guy. So now we've got our random colors that it's generating. So this is our procedural orb glow that we're using with the random color values. So all of this is just using our mix shaders. We're actually going to want this to be plugged into our glass. So we'll plug that over here into the color glass, and then that's going to give us that. Now that looks terrible, so we're going to fix it. It's pretty good. Next up, let's use an emission. And we're also going to take the color values that we have here from our globe, and then we're going to mix our shaders with the emission into it. So that's going to give us a little bit of a better globe to work with. I'm thinking that's working pretty nice now. Okay, great. Next up, we are using a glass shader here. And the reason why is if we add in a light on the inside, and instead of using a sphere that we would have on the inside, let's use a plane. And if we scale that plane down, we're just going to scale it to the inside of our sphere here. Track to the camera, please. And then now it's going to be viewing directly into the orientation of the camera. Perfect. So now we've got ourselves a plane on the inside here. And we want to actually change this to memory orb glow. So now we've got ourselves a plane that's just glowing on the inside. But let's go grab some assets. Let's go open up our browser here. I'm going to, if you guys scroll down inside of my video, you'll see a link to Action VFX's website. But I do think we should import an image texture now. And if we load in our asset that we created, and let's say we're going to set the frames here to, I don't even know what the frames are, but let's do that. Go view this real quick. And let's hide that real quick. And then use this offset here so way we can see our energy ball that we have. It's kind of warped a little weird. We can fix that. So I'm going to delete the mappings that we have here, and then I'm just going to load in our UV editor. And if we go into edit mode, we just got to grab this thing and scale it. I also think we need to scale it outwards like so, and then just position it properly. You see how fast that was if I just did it correct the first time? Get out of edit mode, and voila. It's basically just an image file. Now, this is actually going to animate, so if we were doing an actual shot, this would work totally fine for everything that we're trying to do. But we're going to use this, specifically the color here. And I'm wondering, actually, what does the alpha look like? Oh, that's pretty cool. I actually really like that. Let's go back over here to our UV editor and fix our UVs so that it doesn't clip. We're going to use the alpha now and then plug the alpha directly into the strength. And then we can go ahead and view our emission node. That should work pretty great. Now let's add in a transparent BSDF. And if we do a mix shader now, we can mix between this guy on the A and the transparent on the B, specifically everywhere that the alpha is, which looks like I actually just inverted that. Voila. So now we've got ourselves a glow that's happening there. And again, this is our glow effect, so it shouldn't be casting any shadows. So we want to make sure that that's doing that correctly. So we have our emission and our strength that's happening now, into the strength now. So if we use a math node, we can actually put that before this and then multiply it by a number, and we can increase the amount of emission just by this slider here, basically. And it's all based off of our video. Now, this is using the color of this guy right here. We can control what type of emission color by adjusting this, but I don't think we need to quite yet. So now if we do the inner and we turn that on, we will now have ourselves a glow on the inside that we can control the amount of our strength. And that's going to give it a little bit more of a that effect from the inside of like a memory on the inside of the orb that we're using. There we go, guys. That's our first orb that we created. And obviously we're going to use a particle system to basically emit a bunch of these all around the environment. Let's enable our outer now. And our outer effect, I might want to make this a little shinier. I think one thing that kind of hurts this is how hard the edges are. That looks very CG. And a nice little cool trick you can do is with your area light, you can select use nodes. And then into the strength, I think it's the strength, we can throw in a gradient texture. Let's just view this to see what we're doing here. With our gradient texture, we can throw a color ramp onto this, and we can create more of an effect between the outer edge and the inside. Let's change that to spherical. And if we scroll in to see our effect that we have, let's go ahead and view that real quick. It's now blurring it out quite a bit. And of course, we'll use object plugged into vector. And then we can control the amount of the fall off through a color ramp. And obviously, if we want it to be more white in certain areas, we just increase the contrast of the white. And then obviously, we take this whole thing and we plug this guy into the strength, I believe. And then that gets viewed there. The only thing is our strength was set to a decently high number of like 23. So let's use a math node and multiply the value that we get by 23 from this top value color into the color of our emission. And this will increase the amount that this light is blasting onto everything else. So that is going into the surface, and then we can now view our emission that is coming from there. I want them to feel more like they're glowing on the outer contoured edges of the sphere. So if we add in a Fresnel effect, Fresnel will basically take whatever the outer is from your camera's position and create a matte out of it. So we can use this to basically lighten the edges of our surface. So if we go view our glass real quick, we can add in a effect where we are basically lighting up everything else around it. For this Fresnel though, let's use an emission here. We're going to use an emission. We're going to put that over here. We'll use a mix shader node, and let's mix between that and the emission using the Fresnel effect as our FAC. If we go ahead and view that now, it's going to kind of like lift all of the edges around on this sphere to give it a little bit of a brighter effect that's going on. Let's just use a 1, and then with our Fresnel effect, we're going to want to use a color ramp, I think. And then everywhere that was like pure white, let's make it a little bit grayer, so that way it's actually not completely using that emission. It's just basically lifting the values a little bit on the outside. Let's add in a cube now. Just kind of line this up a little bit. Actually want to be able to view it from camera view. And then let's turn on this now. There we go. Let's make one bookshelf here that we can duplicate down. Just join these areas together and select everything and just bevel it. You only really need these 2 edges beveled, so we'll do that. Let's apply specifically the scale. There we go. I think that's a good size with a little bit more. There we go. I think we could do shade smooth by angle, and that should do a better job. And then now we can go in and use an array to basically create all of our shelves. So I'm going to do the bottom shelf first, one that's basically ground level. This is an easy way of testing our theory here. We have to basically have the shelf fit the memory ball with inside of it. Go and delete that for right now. And now we just duplicate that upwards. We're going to create all of our shelves. Now, how many shelves? Well, that's a good question. If we add another array in here and we use the negative value here to basically line this up down our walkway, we're going to want this, I don't know, a couple times. So let's just do that. And if we go to our first array that we're doing and increase the amount of shelves, we want it to go off camera on that far one. I think this is decently simple to do. If we add in just a plane and delete all but one vertice, we'll just move that all the way to the center of our bookshelf, probably a little bit towards the front of it. That's on the ground. And now if we just extrude that outwards, I'm going to copy the orientation or the rotation of the z-axis on this shelf, so that way this line is kind of following that. So now it's like all of the spheres will be lined up along that. And inside of this guy, it's just 2 points basically. And let's see, let's go to geometry nodes. Geometry nodes, guys. But we're going to create new geometry nodes, and then let's say points or points of curve, curve 2 points. Let's see, mesh 2 points. So then we've got our mesh 2 points, and it's got 2 different points that it did. Cool. So then we can do subdivide surface. Now it's got 3 points. So if we increase the amount of our subdivision of our surface here, it'll give us more points along that edge. Now we've got all of these vertices here. So it says mesh to points. Now we could say instance on points. I think that might be it. So you feed points into it, and then you've got your instance. And this can be collection. So this is a collection instances, and you feed this into the instances, right? Now I can feed in memories. Separate children, reset children, relative. Great. So it did it. It did it, but like in the wrong location. Let's do transform. Do they got transform geometry? We can translate it over. And so let's just use this array, move this above the geometry nodes. Let's use constant offset 0. Just line this up with the shelf by 1. Now I've got that. Now all we have to do is just actually increase this array number, and we have now spheres going all the way up our shelf. What does that look like in render view? Does it actually make all of them different colors? It does. Guys, we did it. Wow. Some simple geo nodes, basically. Yeah, let's work on the rest of this shelf just to give it some nice kind of like modern feel. That's one of the things that's pretty interesting about our photo here. It's got this nice modern feel to the mesh. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's add in like a cube. I'm thinking we'll just roughly block this thing out first. Have that go all the way up. We do need to like rotate this on the z-axis to kind of match the shelves. So like, because the shelves are slightly rotated, we always need to match that as much as possible. Just have it bulge out a little bit, just to give it a little bit of a feeling of not feeling too perfect. You know, it's just got to have a nice, I feel like sharp edge to it is the best way to describe it. We just have to extrude these guys outwards. So probably something like that. Oh, whoops. And then grab this edge here just to bring it in. I kind of want to subdivide surface, but I know that's not going to do us super nice. So let's just bevel the edges a bit if we can here. Let's actually mirror this, I think. That's just going to be on the front. And now I just kind of need this to be mirrored around itself. So if we just like grab this whole thing, let's grab this here and say cursor to selected. And then let's duplicate this whole thing and then mirror around the x-axis here, immediately across from each other, and then join everything together. Because we're having this curve here, I might not want to use an array. We might just like duplicate everything manually. Okay, so then this will be the last one on this edge, but since we're not using any arrays or anything like that, I can just go ahead and delete this half of it, and so that way it just encases it inwards. And let's go ahead and grab this guy over here and then just duplicate and move him over. Let's go ahead and select our orbs, and kind of need to do the same thing. Let's go into edit mode here and just duplicate our instance here, and then we'll just duplicate that again over here to this other shelf. And then we just have to grab this one point and then move it over. And we can create the memories on the other side here as well. It's basically the same thing that we already have, but just like moved over. We have this area light that we made. Now it worked perfectly for our one sphere, but it's not going to work for every single other sphere that is basically duplicated, because obviously there's not infinite lights on everything. But we could do that if we wanted to. So let's go ahead and work on that real quick. So under our light here, we have our data set settings right now. We can actually set this up so that it's only emitting basically the specularity, the glossiness, not anything else. So we'll just disable diffuse, we disable transmission and volume scatter in case we actually do any of that stuff later. And then we can place this area light under our memory orbs. So now it's actually going to create a crap ton of these lights, each individually throughout the entire sequence. Relationship lines, light colors, extras. You can turn off extras, I suppose. And now we're going to basically have lights throughout our entire scene that are basically lining everything up. Yeah, let's turn that off for now. We're not going to use that area light for right now. Let's work on texturing this environment. Pillar. What color is it supposed to be? I guess slight purplish dark gray. I'll take out a bit of the saturation here. And then we can select pillar, I suppose, for all of these. Let's see, and then all of these are basically just like golden shelves, right? So let's just change that to kind of like a bit of a golden color. Let's keep that in render view over there, and then let's just grab this, and then that's fine, I suppose. Yeah, something like that. It's pretty nice. And then that way we get that little piece of the sky up there. And then we'll fix this. I feel like this just makes it feel a little bit too claustrophobic with how it's like rotating inwards here. It's either that or this all just feels a little too claustrophobic. So we could kind of probably just move everything away. But yes to both of those. I worked on several animated films as well as 3D stereoscopic versions of those animated films, because they tend to do those. At least when they're like theatric released films, they like to do those in 3D. It just gives like, you know, it has more options for, you know, feature release ability. I'm going to create a whole new geometry node setup here. We'll use the same geometry instancing setup as before, honestly. Go to our new plane here and then paste. So we've got our input. I'm going to delete the subdivide, plug that into mesh, and then take that and output it. I think I could delete this as well. And then now we've just got our geometry. Although it's like my goal one day to either work at a studio like Pixar or something like that where I can work on animation as an animator. Whereas I honestly, I would love to work as like a shading artist as well. Like I love doing shading. I love doing lighting. Like that's some of my favorite stuff about all of this. So I think like one day I could totally see myself trying to work at a studio and doing that kind of stuff. But also I would love to, like, I almost want to do that just so that eventually I can be a director in animation. Now we can just duplicate this one vertice, guys. This just basically allows us to put little spheres wherever we want them. So now we can fill out our scene. Let's turn off all of our instances for right now. And let's get into this, guys. So the bottom section, I don't really have much that needs to be done on it other than like, let's just add a cube. Make sure that we're getting the rotation down, the 1.3, whatever. And then I'm just going to line this bad boy up and we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Scale that down now. Let's just grab this edge and then add quite a bit of a bevel, I think. And later, guys, we can always go through and add in a bunch of, you know, dirtiness to this as well if we want to, just to add some more realism to it. scale it up. I think that's good. Let's just scale that down. I saw that they're making another Lego movie that's like a Pharrell Williams documentary style Lego film, which I thought was just like such an interestingly unique way of making a documentary, was by making it a Lego film. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. And I don't know if it's a documentary or what it is, but that's what I gathered just from watching the trailer. Oh, we can turn on extras again. Now that we're not spawning in a billion different instances of a light, we can turn that back on. Let's do this. Let's rotate this like so. Try to get rid of the shadow as much as possible. Another thing we could do to get rid of the shadow is we could actually turn off shadow for this. Turn off shadow for this as well. So that way it's kind of just this that's casting a shadow. And then the overall lighting, I mean, we are going to want to have some kind of like glow that's happening. So let's do that. Let's go to top view here. Have like kind of like this warm glow, because if we look at the ground back here, it does have like a bit of a warm glow following the spheres. Only thing I'm thinking now is that the overall environment is kind of just a little too harsh on the lighting, our world lighting here. We could fix that just by changing our HDRI. I mean, we could probably fiddle with the HDRI that we already have, but it's not really super worth it, especially since we can just go download another HDRI. Let's go into the material here. So we have this ground material. Let's do object plugged into the vector here, so that way it doesn't stretch things weirdly. And then we'll just scale that down. Also, I'm not a huge TV show guy. Like, I watch movies. I think TV shows are just huge investments. Takes a lot out of you, man. Okay, that's not bad for the ground texture. Let's go for more of a... Let's just plug that into the base color now, and then that's going to kind of get fed. Now, with the lighting and everything, I think that looks pretty nice, and it's a nice texture throughout. And we can use that same kind of setup probably for everything else. So let's just copy that. Go into our purple setup that we have here. I'm going to use an RGB color that is looking like the same purple that we already have. If we increase the saturation on this and then change the hue slightly, it's probably going to get us what we want anyways. And then we plug this into the base color. So now we go and view our principled BSDF. It'll give us kind of like that textured feel to everything, rather than it just being straight up just purple, like so. Something like that. It's probably hard to see through the stream, but I think that would look pretty nice. Then we feed this guy into our base color, and then we just go ahead and view that real quick. Now we're going to have this nice texture on here. It's just something really basic. I mean, I feel like a lot of the shading on this film is pretty straightforward. It's not that crazy, just basic noise textures. So that we could just utilize there. And then let's look at the rest of this. So, I mean, I don't know that I want to really do anything on this, but we could change the roughness here to be more reflective of everything that's around it. I do feel like we could just paste our texture that we already have here, take the lighter gray value of this, and then just plug that into the silver here. Plug that into our base color of our principled BSDF, and then now we'll just kind of get that overall kind of like texture feel to it throughout. I don't want this to be quite as dark though, so let's like lift that up a bit. And then I'm going to do the same thing with this brown. So again, just paste our components that we have. Okay, awesome. That's the environment, really. I mean, it's not that crazy. Now, with this camera in there, let's actually set the depth of field and everything all up real quick. Just go ahead and set up a empty here with like a plane axis. That should totally work just fine for our purposes. Just to see what everything kind of looks like. If we select our camera now, let's go to depth of field real quick and just enable that. And find our empty. Do 5 blades on our background, kind of like bokeh that we've got going on here. And we want it out of focus, but maybe not that out of focus. Like this feels way too out of focus. So let's try a 3. And then we always like a nice ratio for our aperture. I think that gives us like a nice lens distortion. 1.5 is anamorphic, so that might be pretty nice to have. The sky, I want it to feel a little more blue. So let's adjust our current render settings. Let's go into a shader editor here and then swap this from object to world. And then on this thing, let's change the saturation to be a little bit more. And that'll bring the sky color to be a little bit more saturated in there. Let's see, let's look at the top of this now. I feel like we could probably just duplicate this and then mirror it as a starter. And honestly, that's probably already pretty damn close to what we need. I might want to change this to our pillar though. So let's, like, I think that might look nicer. Well, I think there's 2 things we could do. Let's grab this, move that down. Something like that should be fine. duplicate it, scale it up, so that's why it's a little bit larger, and then now we select the bottom piece that we have. We either go for the lighter or the not as reflective version, which I think I like a little bit better. It draws a little bit less attention to itself, which is, we don't need it to like really stand out. It's just supposed to like feel like the shelf has like a definitive top to it. And now we can add in that forklift back there. So what do we got here? What does a forklift do? It's just basically a cube, guys. I think, is that long enough? Yeah. Now with a cylinder, we just rotate that. We can always just adjust this stuff later. So I'm just kind of like roughing things out right now. Assign the more reflective material to it. And it's funny because it's like actually a bug, but it gives it that tire tread track to it. And so that really actually works. Just select these two edges here. I'm going to join them. And then now let's go into our settings here. We'll just mirror this, honestly, around the cube. And set that origin to the 3D cursor. There we go. So now we've got ourselves the bottom part of this forklift. This is our forklift. I kind of want everything to be a little bit darker. So let's select this lighter portion here and then decrease that a little bit, ever so slightly. So that way it's got a little bit of contrast against the background there. And now we have to create kind of like that scissor pattern or whatever, the zigzag pattern that kind of goes up, and rotate this on the cursor. So here we go, 3D cursor, boom. And let's see, control in that, not like that. Let's do this through the individual origins. What we need to do is have this pattern go up, basically back and forth. Go back and forth roughly to there, fantastic. Now we join these together, and all we have to do is create an array that moves upwards 1. Control A, all transforms. There we go. Now it moves upwards 1. Then let's just make that a little bit negative. There we go. Now everything lines up. So now we can select everything, bevel it out a little bit. Yeah, that works for me, guys. Now let's just duplicate this. Now this, let's move that to the edge there and mirror it around our forklifts. That way there's actually 2 different push-up things for this one forklift thing. We'll just make ourselves a nice railing. So just grab those corner, faces, and then we're just going to extrude those upwards. Fantastic. And then if we do that, I think if we press F3, we could bridge edge loops. But yeah, let's go ahead and add in another object over here. We'll just add in a cube. And let's grab the edge here, this edge specifically, and scale that guy up. Probably something like that. And then delete only the faces. So now we should have just this cube all the way on the back here. Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and add in a new material on this cube that we have back here. We'll just call this a flag. I always do this on every stream, so you guys know exactly what I'm about to do. Let's just make it black. And this guy, we're going to create a whole new collection that's going to be called flags. Now we just move this into that flag location. And one thing we're going to want to do is we want that enabled on our flags category or collection. This basically makes it so that you don't see it, but it only does indirect lighting, basically. And that'll allow us to be able to create a little bit more of a shadow behind the camera. It's basically reflecting the dark color that we have here, and we can make this whatever color we want. So if we want to, have kind of like a bluish tint that's emitting from everything, we can actually emit whatever color we want onto our environment, but it'll also stop it so that way it doesn't feel like it's just a sky behind us. It should feel like there's more shelves behind us emitting some kind of light back onto everything else. Thank you guys for jumping in and watching the stream with us today. If you guys are new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like the video below if you enjoyed it. All of these project files will be up on Patreon. I upload all the project files every single week that we use and create on stream to Patreon. So if you guys want to grab those files, go ahead and download those. Mess around with this yourself in between the streams. Love to see what you guys are creating. Post your stuff in our Discord. We have links for all of these things in the description of the video. You go and start working on Joy from Inside Out. We're going to 3D sculpt her inside of Blender. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. I'm going to create a new collection here, and we will call this new collection character. And this is where we're going to be doing all of our sculpting work. Now, what I'm going to do right now is we're just going to turn off everything else. So that way we just have a blank environment that we will be working in. And oops, I don't want to do a vertical split. I want to join these areas. Now I kind of have like this whole empty Blender file that I can, move around in and all that stuff really easily. I'll just stay in camera view because we already know kind of where that is. And then obviously we have our reference here of how tall the character's supposed to be. So I find this very useful as well. I kind of want my character to stand probably somewhere right here. And then we'll go ahead and do all of our sculpting based around that. So we can then again turn off our environment, and then this will give us the height of our character. The first thing I like to sculpt is the head position. So, oops, I am pressing all the wrong buttons today. Cursor to selected, and I'm just going to add in a sphere. I usually like starting with a sphere. It's the easiest thing to start with to get like the head shape down. Just place that roughly right there. I'm just going to set the scaling of this roughly to the size of our character's head that we have here. And now if we go ahead and then turn off our reference, now we just have this sphere. Luckily thing for us is that honestly, most of the characters' shapes are pretty simple. So in order to do some sculpting, I like to go to our modifiers here and then just add in a multi-resolution and then subdivide that a few times. You'll notice though that in our viewport, we can customize this. So if we subdivided this like 8 times or something like that, it would give us the ability to have our viewport view something that's a lesser amount, whereas our sculpt and our render would be that higher render amount. And that would be very useful for later when we're starting to do some really precise sculpting moments. As of right now, it's not that big of a deal. So if we swap this over to our sculpt mode, we can now, make our adjustments on the sphere as need be. I'm going to just grab the elastic deform tool, and this is just going to allow me to get the shape of the face just generally in the right area. Before I get started though, I do want to turn on symmetrical if we turn on symmetry on the x-axis here, you can see up here that it's the x-axis. That'll allow us to, you'll see that there's another dot on the exact opposite side of the sphere at this point, and this will allow me to, whenever I make a change on this side, it'll make it on the other side as well. This is helpful for like general things, right? I mean, obviously with some characters, you're not going to have a full-on symmetry. You'll want to have maybe a nose crooked or something like that. And at that point, you'll probably turn off your symmetry. However, a good majority of just getting things started with the shape of somebody's face, you could just have the symmetry turned on, and then that allows you to kind of go through and, make some general shape calls here. So overall, we're going to try to create this jawline here. I always find with sculpting and it's just kind of like an interesting thing, is that sculpting is, it looks more like an alien before it looks like a human, so it's like, you got to be patient with the process. She has a very round face, so we don't have to do too much, crazy jaw lines on her. Although I do want to sharpen up this jawline all the way around. So let's see, let's bring in the head a little bit. And then of course this nose here, I think overall we'll just kind of draw this on. Just got like a bit of a pin nose, And then with the eyes, do kind of the same thing, but with our draw, we're going to subtract that into the skull a little bit. And obviously we'll smooth all of this out later, but just kind of get in that general area. For the most part, I like to just make the eye sockets at this point. And then we'll just, smooth some things out. That's just adding a little bit of clay here. Maybe not so close together either. So let's use that elastic deform just to drag things out a little bit. I'm going to use the plus here to kind of like crease outwards on this bottom edge of the eyeball. Whereas the negative works really well for tucking things in. It's kind of like a pinch. It is kind of funny because like I feel like I get used to just making less tools work for more things. So like rather than using this crease and then swapping over to a pinch, I just go up here and hit the subtract button to basically get what I need. I don't like the shape of the face here. I feel like we could elastic deform it outwards. I just want it to feel more round at the top of her face. Let's use that elastic deform and just kind of clean this up. I have very little experience with sculpting. I've done a few characters myself in practice. They tend to be, I like to do more Tim Burton style characters because they've got like that kind of like aesthetic to them that I really love. So that was most of the characters I did. And then I did a live stream previously with like a wooden man was the name of the character. And that one I really loved. Again, a little more Tim Burton-y than, anything else, but it had that kind of like that sad quality that Tim Burton characters generally speaking have. But I just love that. I think that it has such a soul and feel to the character that you don't often get, on like these other styles of characters. I back in the day, before I knew I wanted to do visual effects or anything like that, some of the stuff that I loved to watch the most was was basically Weta workshops behind the scenes on filmmaking and creating special effects. And I think that always very much intrigued me. I'm going to add in a UV sphere just for the eyes, just for right now. It'll just make it a little bit easier. And we'll go ahead and mirror this around our character here. Just kind of like filling in this area for where the eye is supposed to exist. She has like kind of like a bit of an odd shape of an eye. I'm going to use the elastic grab here just to create a little bit more of a sharp edge here on the eye. She has kind of like this rounded or squarish bottom to her eye, so that we're going to try to emulate that a little bit. And then a little bit more of a point as well here in the center. I think her eyes are supposed to be more narrow and a little bit further apart. Let's go ahead and hide this real quick. Let's go back over here into sculpt mode and then use the draw function. Just, oops, not subtraction, but we want to add maybe not quite that much. Object, Alt H, scale those down. I want the eyes to be thinner. Yeah, roughly that thin should be good. And then let's just fix the shape a little bit. Let's do the draw now, and then we're just going to do an additive draw. I just want to do a small amount of additive draw here. Just going to add in some cheekbones, give a little bit of shape to the face. And then we'll do a bit of a subtractive draw with about the same amount to, you know, just get that area where the mouth is supposed to be. All right, that's cool. And then let's smooth that out now. Trying to create like this bottom part of her head to be a little bit bigger than the top part, just the way her jawline is kind of like coming outwards. I'm going to smooth out kind of like this nose a little bit. Let's go ahead and save that. And then I'm going to go back over here. We'll subdivide another layer. Let's go to camera. We just added a new camera. And then let's just add this camera here. And let's turn on our background images. We already have a background image, so let's just load that guy. Put that in the front. Just roughly line up the smiley face. Shift S, cursor to selected. Now let's rotate everything around the 3D cursor. Let's hide our eyeballs for a second. We're going to just get the proportions set up correctly here, okay? Let's use this shape tool to kind of like roughly get the eyes to be in the correct location. I'm going to have to clean this up, but like roughly this is going to give us the right size of everything, right? Since we are doing a specific camera perspective, we might as well. Let's turn off symmetry now. And kind of just line up this eye on this side now. Oh, let's see. Let's go to object mode. And then let's just re-enable our opacity a little bit. Just so we can create this mouth shape. We're just tracing. This isn't creativity. This is a technical sport. See, guys, that is skill right there. It's pure skill of creating lips that are just traced. Okay, let's clean that up. Okay, that's good. Save. Now we're going to use the crease tool. That or pinch. We'll just go straight for pinch. And I'm just going to pinch the lips in. Let's go over here, grab. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, object mode that. Let's keep that at 6, I think. And let's see, these eyes here. Perfect. And okay, so now that they're not mirrored, I'm going to have to apply that. Just drag this out a little bit. Bulge this out slightly. We're just kind of creating the shoulder area where the shirt is going to interact with things. I think overall, that's probably the right shape for that. Object mode here. And I'm going to stick some teeth in here now. Let's go ahead and just add in a cube, I think. She really only has like 3 teeth. It's kind of funny. There we go. I'll shade smooth that. Bring that back there. I feel like that's a little better. And then now we'll just use the regular grab tool here just to clean that up. Whereas we could use the layer tool, I think, and then just create a little bit of these dimples that she has on the side here. Way less of a strength. With a nice little crease on the inside if we pinch that. I like that cheek that we did there. Now we just need to do a little bit of something over here. Yeah, we'll first use the layer. Draw layer. There we go. And kind of do the same thing that we did earlier. Although this time we'll do it with like our lips here a little bit. It makes it look a little bit less flat, I think. And then overall over here, she has like this kind of like dimple as well. So let's try to get that in as well. So she's got this layer firstly on the outside. And then we then smooth that over. Oh, first of all, if we select this in shade smooth, that'll finish off that kind of like overall base mesh. We're going to try to 3D model just this shirt design real quick. Now this is where things can become a nightmare really quickly. Do that, do this, do this. We're just going to try to overlay this. That's all we're trying to do. Let's just get this neckline first. We don't need to do the back side of the shirt. We just need to do the front because that's all we're doing for this particular photo. So I think that's good. We can grab this vertice here. Let's extrude that out. And that's probably pretty close to what we want. Now, pretty much all we have to do is copy paste this. And this is a little bit more of manual work than sculpting at this point. It's basically just filling in all of these edges. So, you know, we have all that. Let's just fill that in. And now just kind of creating all of these faces of our object. These characters don't have too much chest, so it's like not much other than just a dress that's going to fall down her body, really. Great. And that's like the whole front. That's like the whole front right there. And we're not doing the back of the dress for this particular shot. I mean, we only see the front, so there's not really a reason to do the back. So let's go ahead and fill the rest of this in. You know, and if there's any like spots that need to have a little bit more, you know, love to it, we can do that as well. And then now we just fill in the back here. I apologize for lying, saying I wasn't going to do the back of the dress as well, but I realized that if we ever wanted to rotate the character at all, that was going to make it very annoying, because I have to subdivide surface this thing, which will create a lot more vertices. Okay, great. So now if we go to our modifiers, we'll just go ahead and add in a subdivision surface, shade that smooth. Looks like we have some normals issues. We can view what those normals issues are by going and viewing the normals. So we'll just go over here to the normal direction. I think is a checkbox in here that we can select. Forget how to face orientation. Yeah, there it is. And you can see the individual faces and the way in which that they're rotated. So if we select these faces, like so, just go and select all the blue faces. Because blue is supposed to be the inside of your object, and then red is supposed to be the outside of your object. So if we select all of the blue faces that are supposed to be the outside of this dress, and then we go ahead and then go to mesh, normals, flip, that's going to fix our problem. So now if we turn that back on, and we turn off our face orientation, we now no longer have any weird crease issues inside of our shirt. Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and then fix this right here. What a gorgeous looking dress that we have here, guys. Never been more proud of clothing. Now let's add in a solidify, and that's just going to create the inside edge for our dress that we have. Right now it's puffing everything outwards. We can actually make it go insetted if we want by going negative 0.0, like 2 or something like that. That'll give us a nice little thickness to our dress overall. Let's worry about the clipping now. Let's fix some of this clipping that we have. Let's be honest, making hands is really complicated. It is. But I'll tell you what, if any of you guys want to make hands and then send it to me on Discord, I'll just use your hands or arms. I don't care. If you guys could just make it, I'll use it. Like, I don't need to make this stuff. Okay? I'm over it. We could work on the sack, although I'll be honest, a sack should be pretty easy. I'm gonna grab that kind of like that, I suppose. Yeah, we're done. We're done, guys. Multi-resolution that. And I'm thinking sculpt mode now, because the idea is that we could just use this sphere, because that's like ideally what is going to be the outside of the sack, or what's supposed to be on the inside. And so now if we just grab things upwards, we're basically creating just the outside of the sack at this point, while keeping the initial shape. So probably going to want to do that. Let's go ahead and subdivide our work here, so that way we have a little bit more vertices to work with. Great. And then let's go ahead and do this. We're going to draw negatively into this. We're going to try to create some of the sleeve-like aspects of this. We're going to increase the strength of that a little bit. And go ahead and just use that elastic grab again. And just close that off. Subdivide another time. And again, just go into here. Just create that internal aspect of it. We don't have to see all the way inside because we're only seeing the top bit. And then they do have like a cloth-like functionality inside of here that I have found somewhat helpful for certain things. We might want to turn the strength down on this quite a bit, but you know, just creating a little bit of wrinkleness on our overall package. And I'm going to use the draw tool here just to draw in some of the wrinkles that we want to have. Let's go back into object mode now. And using this multi-resolution thing, we're going to have like these areas in which the rope is going to kind of go through it. So let's create that. Those we just make with like a Boolean, honestly. So let's go ahead and add in a UV sphere, or not a UV sphere, a cylinder. And let's see, let's make this UV cylinder go all the way through. And let's duplicate it over here as well. I'm going to scale these down on individual origins. Let's do individual origins, scale that down just so each of these circles is a little bit smaller. And then sure, we'll go ahead and duplicate this over here and duplicate this over here like so. Now I'm going to join all of these together as one cylinder. And then after this multi-resolution thing, let's go ahead and use a Boolean. And that Boolean is just going to be of this cylinder. Let's just do fast. I always find fast works better for some reason. And then these guys, they're not going to be viewable. They're not going to render. We just basically want the circles only. But we can take these now and let's go ahead and subdivide surface. But I think we're going to keep the design simple, shade smooth it for sure. And I think maybe we get rid of that. Yeah, it doesn't make that big of a difference. And that's going to give us our initial like kind of circles that are going to go through. Now we have that like lip that causes the fabric to not have like any fringing or anything like that. So we're going to want that as well. Just go into edit mode now. And for instance, select this top face here. Just go all the way down, extrude that. So that's going to go in like so. And then we'll extrude that down a little bit. And then extrude that and delete only the faces. And then now you've got kind of like this. I don't know why it took me so long to realize I could literally just do that with a cylinder. Let's scale that down now to the correct orientation and size. Just line that up with the hole, guys. And then you've got yourself a nice little threaded like hole section. We'll go ahead and shade smooth that. And that is perfect for that. So then all we have to do is have the rope coming up afterwards. So let's just do this second hole here. Probably from our camera perspective here. Probably want one on that as well. So let's just zoom in on that real quick. Duplicate that over and just make sure we're seeing that correctly. Cool. Okay, so we'll save that and let's add in a curve real quick. We're going to add in a Bezier curve. And with this Bezier curve, this is just going to be like our rope that we were going to have. So now we can just scale everything in, just kind of like line it up with where the circle is. Yeah. And then now it's just got to go through the other side as well. So scale that down, position that over here, go into our geometry now, and then just extrude the depth of this. And then this is just going to go over to her shoulder. Extrude that, and then have that go over her shoulder. And then we can rotate this, because I think I accidentally rotated it the wrong direction. And then just extrude that as well. Let's get started on the hair. No promises that we're going to finish this today, but I just want to throw a hair particles on there. Let's take this sphere and let's duplicate it. This is just the head. And then we'll call this hair. I'm going to take our multi-res and just apply it on the hair. And inside of this hair one, if we go into edit mode, we've got all these lovely vertices of where we're going to spawn hair from. And basically, we need to select only the areas in which we want hair to spawn. Right now, it would spawn hair everywhere. So if we select, primarily the hair follicles all the way back there. Actually, this might also make it a little bit easier on us. Let's go into a modifier here and use a decimate function. And let's use the ratio of like a 0.1 or something. Okay, great. I'm going to turn off the other sphere that we have. This is the one that was our head. I'm also going to turn off all of this as well. And instead of deleting the faces, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to go and let's apply this, first of all. And we're going to go into a weight painting section. Here's our mesh with the ratio cut down quite a bit. So now we're going to go into a weight paint now, and we can add in our weight paint of where the hair is going to happen. So for the most part, I mean, we can kind of follow the area in which we know that the hairline is going to be at. And then that should give us like, nice rough idea. If we go into our vertex groups here, we're just going to call this base hair. And that's going to just be all of the hair. If we wanted to have multiple hairs, like maybe just some bangs or something like that, we can also do that here. For the most part, just have base hair right now. Probably want eyebrows as well. I think I'm going to, instead of draw, let's get it subtract here. I want to clean up the area right above the eyes because we know that we want to have a little bit of a forehead. So now if we go back over here into object mode, what we're going to do now is add in a new hair particle system. And we're going to use vertex groups for the density using base hair. And then also we're going to use the length, base hair, which is just using whether or not it's red, blue, green, the different amount of hair and how long that hair would be that. Let's go ahead and change the hair length all right here. She has decently short hair, but it is a little bit long, We're going to be customizing that quite a bit. But if we just do that, that's pretty great. We're not going to turn hair dynamics on yet. We're going to adjust quite a bit of that stuff later. But we will be turning on children. So we'll turn on children as interpolated. And I like to view what the final result is while I'm viewing the interpolated. I don't like having the display amount to be a different separate number. Okay, great. So now if I go over here into particle edit mode, it'll allow us to actually do quite a bit of the combing of how we want our hair. So I think for the most part, we're just going to follow a bit of that swoop design that she has going on. We will have like basically a comb over part here that we have to like worry about a little bit. We're just going to comb over 2 different parts. One's over the eye here. And then the rest is going to kind of like fall off a little bit to the side. And it's going down the side of her face. For a first pass, it's not bad. Now let's go over here into our vertex group. We're going to create a new vertex group, and we're going to call this top hair, which is going to be just like this overall section right up here. We want it to feel thicker on the top. So let's go in and let's go to weight paint. And for the most part, we're just going to add a draw. We want to select kind of like this section up here, just the middle of the hair. And then I'm going to use the subtractor and then subtract from the front here. And then now if we go back to object mode and we add in a new hair particle system, we're going to use the density option and select top and then change length by top. And then now we just change the hair length to be quite a bit smaller again. And with that, we can go back over here into particle edit mode. I'm just going to comb all of that forward. And this is just going to give a little bit more volume to the center of the hair, which we can also turn on interpolation. Again, we'll just go with 10, I think. And then now you've got a little bit more volume to the top of the hair, you know, without going too crazy. This tuft on the back maybe isn't quite exactly what we want, but it's kind of like maybe the thicker portion of that tuft on the top of the hair. So for instance, now we could go back in, create another vertex group, and then call this tuft. And now select the face, or the face, and then go over here into the weight paint. And we know that we want to add in just this section back here. So let's go ahead and just add that like so. And let's see, let's go into object mode again, create a whole new hair particle system, change this to tuft, and then we'll change the length here to a 0.07, maybe even a little bit longer. Yeah, let's go a little longer, 0.09. We'll change the number of particles here to like a 500. Yeah, should be fine. Let's go back into particle edit mode. And these guys just kind of feel like we're trying to shove them down, crunching them up a little bit. And then these, you know, just trying to comb them forward. You know, maybe she was patting her head down as she was working on it. You know, it's a good start for the hair. You know, a good amount of work still needs to happen on it. A couple tweaks I did do since last time, because I did work on it for like 30 minutes after stream last time, because I just really wasn't happy with how this turned out. I did add a little bit more particles to a few of these guys, and then I did fix some of the combing as well as the puff up here as well, just to give it a little bit more of a feel. This is our camera, and we made everything to work from this camera perspective on the character, and I want this camera to now move everything so that way it's actually rotated in the same direction, if that makes sense. So we actually have this empty here, which we could probably use to rotate everything. So let's select our camera and then just parent it to our empty object keep transform. We just parent everything to the keep transform. Okay, that works. And then let's take this and then now do what Lego Duck is recommending, object keep transform. Well, actually I have to alt P this first, clear parent and keep transformation. And then we grab our, and do it this way, object keep transform. Okay, here we go. We're going to copy this transform here. I suppose you could also, can you do Control C? So now if I do this and I say copy location, and then we do copy rotation, that then sets the new camera location over here and the new rotation over here. And then last but not least, let's move our camera forward because we want a little bit more of a medium shot instead of a wide. With that, under our camera settings, we have our focus here. Let's set our focus to the area in which the eyes are. First, let's open up a shader editor here, and we're going to swap this over to object mode. If I hit new now on this, we're going to create a new color on her. It doesn't look like we have any lighting really. I don't know where the purple's coming from, honestly, but I'm sure it's coming from somewhere. So let's, I don't know where the purple's coming from, so let's actually add in some of our own lights, so that way we can not counteract, because like counteracting lighting is terrible. So we're just going to add in a new light up here. Shine that right on her. It's under flag. It is under flag. I found it. I found it. It's this cube emitting this light here. Let's disable this flag. I mean, I kind of like overall what it's doing to everything else, but I don't want it to affect my collection. So we can do environmental variables for lighting. If we go and select our cube here, I believe under its object property settings, there should be a way to make it only affect specific collections. And I can also just remove the saturation here. Remove the saturation, just make it a little bit darker. So let's just make her yellow because that's what color she is, right? Oh, that's disgusting yellow. Let's do something like that. And then let's increase the value of this all the way. Let's see, I might want to remove some of the saturation as well. But that's the base level color of our character. If we open up this inside of texture paint by creating a new image. So let's do an image texture. We're going to say new image. And we're going to call this rosy cheeks. And then let's create that new image. If we go over to texture paint now, you'll notice that we have that image loaded. And the way we treat this is like a matte, basically. Everywhere that's white, it's going to put our new shader that we want. And everywhere that it's not white, it's going to have the original shader below it. So right now, if I just go ahead and in here and paint, you'll notice that we kind of just get like this overall, blob of color. Now, on my Patreon, I actually released a whole surface imperfections pack that will allow us to be able to have more nuanced textures that we're painting rather than it just kind of like being an overall blob. So let's import some of that right now. I'm going to open up the texture mask now and hit new. If we go over to our texture settings and we select that texture that I just created, you'll notice that it's looking for an image texture. So we'll just hit open. Something like these smudges, I might want to do something like this. So right now I want to make sure that we're using tiling, or not tiling, but rake. If you use a rake, then this will allow you to not paint over yourself too easily. And then now the last thing we want to make sure that we're checked onto is let's scroll up here to texture. Whenever you add a texture mask, I feel like this might be a bug in Blender, but it also applies it to your texture as well, which is where you're going to get the black and white painting over each other multiple times. If we remove this now, this texture, you'll notice that you can actually paint over yourself, which allows you to have a little bit more thickness inside of your paint. And there you go. So now we're just going to go ahead and paint in ourselves some rosy cheeks. I like to give ourselves our own fall off that we're going to have ourselves. So just be a little creative here with how you want this to look. Okay, great. Now with this, let's go ahead and just hit image save. And I'm going to save this over into our VFX materials folder. And now if we go back over to our layout settings, we have our rosy cheeks here already loaded in. And if we preview it, it's just that black and white photo that we already created. And we can then take this principled BSDF that we have here, just duplicate it, make something a little bit warmer, and then use a mix shader that this can plug into the bottom of, and this can plug into the top of, and that's plugged into the FAC, which is our matte. And so now if we view that, you'll notice that we have a little bit warmer cheeks on our character. The other stuff we might want to do is add in a little bit more subsurface scattering. I think if we use random walk skin, this is the best preset for like actual skin settings. This is set to RGB values, so 1 being perfect red, 0.2 is green, and then 0.1 would be blue, red, green, blue. And then we take our yellow here. I just want to make it a little bit more reddish because our character is somewhat not human, but like more human-like, I suppose. She should be emitting a little bit more light. So another thing we could do is use an emission node, and we can mix this on top of everything. So if we use a mix shader after our whole predicament, this will allow us to kind of mix everything a little bit easier. I'm going to use an RGB value of the exact same color. And that's already feeling a lot better for her skin. Now what we can do also is with our new light that we just added into our shot, let's go select that real quick. And then if we go into our object settings for this guy, then with light linking, we got light group, we've got light linking. Let's hit new for the light linking. And if we select our character and drag that in here, now everything under the collection of character is only going to be affected by this new light that we have in here rather than the entire environment. So if we boost this thing to be super high, our character is going to light up, but the rest of the environment will not. Let's go back over here to 3D viewport. Let's duplicate this light, and we're just going to try to create a bit of an underlight for this character as well. I think that lights our character for our base color pretty well. Let's look at some other things. So let's select our character's body here, and I'm going to use a gradient texture. Just view to see what this is doing for us. I think for us, if we just looked at linear right now, we get this nice edge light. One of the things you'll notice that with Joy, in like pretty much every single shot from the entire film, she has kind of like this purplish edge light. But with this linear aspect, this gives us the ability to add kind of like that purple light from the edge without having real lighting in there. So with that being said, though, we can just take this new matte that we just generated from this gradient texture here and create a new mix shader. And if we use that as our FAC, we plug this into the top, we can then take an emission and just duplicate that down here, find ourselves a nice purple color, and we can plug this into the bottom shader. Now that right off the bat doesn't look super great, but we can make some adjustments. So for our gradient that's going in, first of all, we might want to use a color ramp. We'll just plug this color ramp in and then increase the black of this to be a little bit more. The other thing is we can control the rotation aspect of everything here through this. So let's change the rotation of the Y here. We're actually going to make this a negative number. Just hit something a little bit more like that. We can do the freckles pretty easy by, let's see, what does a Voronoi look like? Let's use a color ramp. Let's lessen the amount of these. Let's change the size of this to be a little bit smaller. Okay, great. So I think that amount of dots around the face is really good for the amount of freckles, but let's now target the area in which we want these freckles to live, okay? So let's create a new image texture now. We'll hit new. We'll call this freckles. I don't know if that's how you spell freckles, but that's how I spell it. So we're going to create that one, and let's go over here to texture paint. And then overall on the face, let's just, we don't have to use this texture mask that we already generated, though it really doesn't hurt us either. So let's just create ourselves a matte for the area in which these freckles are going to kind of live. So now let's go ahead and hit image, save, and then we'll just go ahead and save this as well as freckles.png. Go back over to our layout. We're going to use a mixed color. We use a mixed color and then set this to black for the B input. Actually, no, we need that to be the A input. The A input is black. The B input is going to be the freckles that we have, and then the factor goes into the color. If we view that now, it's only going to give us freckles in the area in which we created that matte to be. It's not going to put it all over the face. It's only going to put it in the areas that we want. So now, if we use this as our matte now, let's go ahead and just align this a little bit better. We've got these guys. Let's go view our main shader that we have over all everything. So now let's use an RGB node. And then this RGB node is going to be this color value there. And then let's use a curve, an RGB curves, and plug that into the color down there. And we're just going to make this somewhat darker. Not a lot darker, just a little bit. And then let's use a mix color node, and we'll plug this into the B input. And then let's move this up a little bit, and then plug this into the A input. So now we have this same color, but it's somewhat darker here through this kind of like mix node. Now this factor needs to have our matte that we already generated of our freckles. So our freckle generated black and white photo that we have here is going to plug into our mix node. So let's go ahead and plug this guy into our factor. So now if we go ahead and view this, this should just be a regular color, and we can obviously make our adjustments here. So that way you've got some darker freckles in like certain areas. And then of course we can always change the amount of our color ramp here for the amount of freckles that are really showing. And then that, instead of us viewing it, let's plug this directly into our principled BSDF. And so now if we go view our mix shader with everything into it, we will now have these faint freckles throughout the face. Let's use like an RGB node. Can I plug this into our radius? I remember us talking about this like a few months back. I'll admit, I haven't gotten into learning the new thing yet. Increase the weight? Okay, we'll increase the weight. Oh, yes, you are right, Victor. And then this probably doesn't need to be quite as fleshy colored. Let's add a new image texture in. We're gonna hit new. We'll do lips, new image. And then if we go over to our texture paint node, we're gonna paint our lips on here. I think we're also gonna get rid of our texture mask. We want to paint the areas in which the lips are. So let's try our best to hand do this. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and take this, and then we'll say image, and then we'll hit save, and then we'll call that lips. Can actually always clean this stuff up here as well. Like we know that this internal aspects here we don't want because that's probably on the inside of the mouth. So we can actually easily paint out a lot of this pretty simply by just going over here to our 2D side of the UV unwrapped image. Let's go ahead and add in a new principled BSDF with that new pink color because she's got pink lips, right? She's got pink lips. She got pink lips, guys. Okay. Let's do that something a little more subtle, not too crazy. And we'll probably want the roughness to be much lower. And so this right here, I think for like the base texture of the lips, it's not a bad look. The only other thing I want is some lines. Color ramp is what we really want. Let's go see what this looks like. So if we boost that, then that's down. Let's change out noise texture to wave texture. That works really well. Of course, if we just plugged in as object now, that's going to map everything better. Let's change the scaling here to be a little bit smaller. I will say I do want it to blur a little bit more. Let's first do that. Then add in the detail between. I like triangle the best. We use color ramp and change the black value here to be kind of more of a gray, I suppose. Let's use an RGB node with the pink value of our initial pink value. Let's use a curve, like an RGB curve, down slightly. And let's see, we got to clean this up a little bit. We got a lot going on here. All right, that's there. And then use a mix color node. That's going to have this plugged into the FAC, not plugged into that, and then this plugged into that. So now we're going to have our lips be a little bit more nondescript. Let's see, let's make that a little bit smaller. And then this then gets plugged directly into our base color. And then let's actually more so use this effect here and plug this into our roughness. So that's going to give us overall our lips. And then let's use a mix shader now with from the lips here to the FAC. And then of course this plugged into the bottom value. Now we've got this mix shader. Let's plug this guy into the top value. And then this mix shader, we just replace it all the way to the end. So now we've got ourselves some lips that we're going to want to desaturate a little bit. Use a color ramp on this top bit here. And for everything that's white, we're just going to lessen it to be like more gray to make her lips not feel so, make them feel a little bit more blended in. That's going to plug into our mix shader that we have there. Of course, we can always make this a little more saturated like we had before. So this is the full lipstick color. And then in this gray value here, the more white it is, the more we're going to see of those lips. So that's her lips. I mean, they're pretty subtle. They're not supposed to be anything crazy. And then we're supposed to do the inside of her mouth there as well. So what we'll do is we'll create another image texture. Scroll in on this guy here. Hit new, mouth, new image. Now if we go into texture paint, we've got our whole character here, okay? All we need to do is paint the inside of this mouth white, because that's the area which we are selecting. Okay, and then now let's paint this outside off. Save this as mouth.png and then go back over here into our layout. We now have this mouth texture. What we're going to do is let's use a mix color node. And here's our mouth. And everywhere that our factor is happening, we want to mix in a black color value. Okay. And we can take that from our actual lips here. So if we take the lips color value here and plug that into FAC, it will automatically subtract everything on the outside. So if we go and view this, you'll see that we are subtracting on the outside of the lips there. Okay, so this is going to give us everything that's on the inside of the mouth here. And I want to mix that before we do the lips. So the lips are being done at this mix shader node here. So let's go ahead and back this off a little bit. We want to have this happen on this A strand here before it goes in. Oh, that's on the A strand here before it goes into this top shading value. So that being said, we've got this matte. Let's move this down. We'll do another mix shader node, and this value will get plugged into the FAC of that. And what we need now is the internal mouth texture. I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this principled BSDF that we have here. What the heck? Oh, there's two of them. They were so perfectly lined up, I didn't realize there were two of them. So we're going to duplicate this bottom one here, and we're just going to make this a darker purplish value, and that should get plugged into this shader input here. So now if we go ahead and view this, we'll see that. I might just make this a little bit lighter. So we don't really want it dark in there as much as it is the inside of a mouth. Okay, great. That ends, I think, the skin. But you'll notice that we still have this hard edge here on the skin. And how are we going to stop that? Well, this is going to be done by creating discs that are going to emit off of the body of the character. Because inside of our photo here, you'll notice that there's all these particles like coming off of the skin and all of that. And so in order for us to generate that, we kind of need to do the same thing. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. We're going to turn this into solid view. I'm going to create a whole new particle system here, guys. This one we're just going to keep as regular default settings right now. But if we turn this on and we just view this, you'll notice that it's just emitting a crap ton of particles here, which isn't really helping us. We'll create a new plane and then rotate this on the y-axis here, 90 degrees. We'll just scale that down. And then this plane here is our particle. And let's go ahead and put this under... We'll keep it under character, but let's create a new collection under character called particles. We'll go over to our particle object here, and then let's add in skin as its material. The only other thing that we may want to do is we'll go into a... let's add in a gradient texture. I'm going to, for right now anyways, let's go over to our particle system that we just generated. We'll call this skin particles, and we'll just turn those off because we don't need to see that right now. But this plane right here, let's work on creating a spherical shape. If we add in this gradient texture as linear, we can see really what we were doing earlier. We're going to want to find a spherical option. Obviously, it's going to put it up in the top corner because right now we're not telling the vectors where to place themselves. But if we make sure to just plug an object into our mapping option, it will actually center our particle sphere to the correct location. Now, what does this get us to do? Well, we can create now a plane with a nice fall off to it into a transparency. So if we use like not a mix node, a mix shader node, and we add in a transparent BSDF, and we plug this into the top value, and then our total mix shader that we have for the rest of the skin into the bottom value here. And then we plug this gradient texture into the FAC, and then we plug this shader node into the surface, and we go ahead and view that. Now we're going to get ourselves a skin particle that is basically appearing here. Now we will want to make sure that we duplicate our overall material here and just call this particle. And then our regular skin here, we're just going to bypass that effect that we just did there. So let's go ahead and plug that into our surface and delete the rest of our nodes here. So now we're going to have a nice skin texture here, but then obviously we're going to create like kind of these like tiny little bokehs that are going to appear. Now we can control how much of this is falling off, how much it's falling off and all that by just adding in another color ramp, plugging that into this value here. And if we just view this, this will make it a lot easier. Just go ahead and just, add in a little bit of a sharper edge to this thing. Inside of our particle that we have selected here, we want to make sure that this is pointing towards the camera, okay? And we can just orient that ourselves like so. Or we can go into our modifier settings, and then we can say track to camera, I believe. And now it's going to be pointing towards the camera. I'm just going to apply that for right now. Although you can keep that as an option in here. It's that way when we generate our particles, all of our particles will be pointing towards the camera. So now we go back to our skin modifier that we already have here. Go to our particles that we already have, and then click on the skin option. And under render, instead of halo, let's click on object. And under object, let's select our particle that we have. So now we've got our particle. And now all we have to do is turn that on, go back to frame 0, and then let it emit all of our particles. Now they're going to be really small at first. I'm going to set the scaling to 1. Let's set the scale randomness to 0.9. So that way we've got a difference of 0.9 between all of our different particle sizes. And then let's make sure that we copy object rotation from the particle that we actually have. These particles don't have gravity. So we can actually go to our particle settings, and we can go to field weights and then turn off gravity. And then let's go ahead and play that. Now they're just kind of floating everywhere. Next up, let's set the end values to 200. That's totally fine. Let's set the frame start to -50. So that way we already have a bunch of particles on the first frame. And then we're going to make sure that these don't float outwards too far. So let's go to our, probably our velocity settings here and remove some velocity. Go to our physics. Let's increase the dampening and the drag. And now they're just kind of sitting there. So let's decrease that. Let's set frame start to -1 and frame end to 1. The next thing we need to do is go over here to our scale and change this to 0.1 maybe. 0.15. Set that to 0 velocity. Is that going to help me? Do 0.01. And then we can do frame start -10 or -100. And then let's set this lifetime to be like 25. So that way we have new ones spawning. I'm creating kind of particles that are emitting off of her body. That'll be using a similar shader to her skin. And this one is including the shadow. Let's get rid of the shadow. Next up, let's go to our emitter here. Let's just add a whole nother number to that. Let's do 0.5 on these particles that are being emitted off of the skin here, so that way they're actually brighter than the skin itself. Vertex groups. We can use a vertex group to basically not emit from specific areas. I think we only want edges. I'm not quite sure how we could have that so it's always knows what the vertex group closest to a camera would be. But for us anyways, we can go and create ourselves a vertex group. So if we go over here and let's swap this into a 3D viewport. We'll go ahead and just save our work as we're moving along here. Let's create a whole new vertex group and we'll call this face. Go into weight paint with that face selected. We're basically going to want to, not with subtract, but with the add option here, we don't want to emit anything from, you know, like the area where the eyes are or where the mouth is. There we go. So now we go back into object mode, hit save. So go back into weight paint with our face selected. We do weights, invert, and then there we go. Now we go back out to object mode, select our density to be face, and then let's recache. I think we can go in and do some lighting tricks now to kind of like create that same aesthetic that we're going for. So let's create, for instance, a edge light on the back shoulder of her here. Let's add in an empty, I think. Add in a sphere here. Just move that upwards. And then if we select this guy here, well, what is this empty called? Blue? There we go. Call it direction. And then I'm going to add in our direction as our object that we want to correlate with. If I grab this guy now and rotate him, I should be able to control how the direction of this object is affecting our overall sphere here. And then now we go ahead and add in a color ramp, which that color ramp is too much. But if we added, that was because that was the old values that we were going with. Add a color ramp in here, and then we'll just blacken this up a little bit as well. We're just going to try to move this fall off to be a little bit further back. Wonderful. Okay, great. And so that way, that's based off of our object coordinates. Well, here's the best part. Is because it's based off of the object coordinates, that means all of our particles will be following the same exact rules, okay? So we're going to use this, plug that into our FAC, put that there, and then that into the regular color node there. Fantastic. And then we lessen the amount of our black. And that should give us a nice kind of like purplish glow. Great. Now let's take this. I'm going to copy this, save it, and then go select our particles that we have, which we can enable again. If we go to render view on this and then we select our particle that we have, what we want are these particles here to be just as purple. So we're going to go ahead and paste our nodes that we already created. And then we just take this guy and we plug this into the FAC. We invert these options here, and then voila. Do particles not get affected like the rest of the... Oh, there we go. I just need to adjust the color ramp options here, I think. If we select that, you'll notice that that's an orange bar there. All we have to do is go over to our particle settings now, and we can go under cache, and then I can say bake. What this is going to do, it's going to bake all of our frames that we have here, and I believe I only have that many frames, so we don't have to worry about it. Let's go ahead and save that. We're just going to go to frame 10 now, and it should never disconnect our particles again. Okay, so that's all done. Let's go ahead and try to tackle the hair now, okay? So we'll go into here. We're going to add in a new material this time. Hit new, and then we'll call this hair. First of all, we can swap this over to a principled hair BSDF. This right off the bat is going to give us some nice looking hair, but this is not going to be what we want, okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to do some different grads of the hair, okay? So let's get hair info here. How do we get the info? Is it point info, object info? I think we can get object info. And then inside of our hair particle settings, we're going to need to turn all of these into the hair settings here. Okay, great. So let's get started on our hair now. So she's got kind of like this overall blue hair. So we could swap this color. Let's just make it a little bit brighter. Let's find a blue, very electric blue looking color. So she's got kind of like these hair particles throughout her strands. And we can kind of do that by creating these specks. Now, these specks can be made using maybe like a Voronoi, which we'll set to some texture coordinates, and I'll make sure that's set to object rather than generated. And then with this Voronoi, we can maybe add in a color ramp, and let's just plug the color into this as well. Set the scale to like a really large number. 95 looks pretty good. And with the color ramp, let's just go ahead and make that quite a bit more crunchy, because we don't need particles everywhere. She doesn't have sparkles everywhere. She's got them pretty intermittent. Let's do 120. We've got a gradient texture. We'll swap this over to a B-spline, I think, or no, let's keep it as cardinal. I have no clue why this is not working, but it should. Is strand length? Is it length? I guess that kind of works to what we're trying to do. Her hair tends to be lighter on the edges than it is at the center. It's like it's darker on the center and then it gets lighter on its way out. So that's what I'm trying to do right here. It's either that or we could use like a principled BSDF with the exact same shader. I think the emission is just not going to give us enough detail. And so that way we could do that with a mix shader. So this is on the bottom value. Let's take this value here and just make it a little bit more electric blue. Put that on the top value. And then we'll use this guy plugged into that mix shader. So that should give us two different values for the hair. One is going to be a little bit darker and the other one's going to be a little bit brighter. Actually, let's take this guy and plug that into this value here. And then let's take this value here and then just make it a little bit less. Oh, we need to add in some makeup now, though, for our character. So let's go ahead and add in a new image texture. Go in here and add new, and we're going to call this makeup. Hit new as well. Now, if we go over to our texture paint option, we're going to want to paint in this area around the eyes. We're going to get this eyebrow makeup in here, okay? So let's go ahead to our tools and then make sure we've got white selected. There we go. That's one eye down. Let's do the other eye as well. Okay, great. So that's the eyes. And let's go over here to image save. Save that as makeup for the top. I mean, if we had any other makeup, we could do it there as well. And for her eyes, it's basically just this dark blue, right? So let's use a principled BSDF with, you know, our makeup dark blue, purplish, bluey, purple, blue, whatever. Use a mix shader node here, but I don't want to do it at the end of our whole stack. We got to do it before the purple happens. So this right here is mixing the lips on, so we'll probably want to do it around there. That's totally fine. So we'll use this makeup picture that we just implemented, and then our color of our makeup. And then let's plug this into the bottom of this shader. And that is very out there. Let's desat it a bit. Change the brightness here. And then we can always change the color ramp here as well to not be quite so white. Could be a little bit more mixed into the rest of the face. And then in a new collection, let's create a new collection here. Eyes. Let's create a new mesh, UV sphere, scale that down, rotate X or Y 90 degrees, shade smooth. We can then select our eyeball that we have here, delete our principled BSDF that we've already got going on, delete our direction, and then now we have this radial color ramp that we've got, okay? This is where we're going to use a color ramp associated with this eyeball. And then now if we just maximize the white area on this, there we go, the start of an eyeball. What I can do here is use a sphere projection. And then over here, let's use a UV editor. So first of which, we're going to do our sclera. So that's this big ol' area on the outside. That's our white area. That's our sclera. Done. We've already did it. Okay. Let's join these two areas here together. Next up, we basically need to create the pupil on the inside, and that's going to break up all the different aspects of this gradient that we have. So now let's go view this guy over here. We're going to bring our white to be larger, or smaller, actually, is what we really want. So we'll take this black area here, and we make this quite a bit smaller. Honestly, you can make this a lot easier by just making this a constant. Now, our eye is going to be made up of all of these like strands that are basically going to go out from the center. And then this effect we're going to be using on the rest of everything. So let's go ahead and now use a principled BSDF. Let's swap this over to her blue eyes that she has. She has like a blue color like that. Now we do have our overall gradient here, and we can kind of use a color ramp based off of that. So if we go over here, plug that into the color, should be able to increase this to some value there. And on the outside of the eye, let's see, let's increase that a little bit. This is going to be the darker blue, so let's go ahead and make that darker. And on the inside of the eye, we're going to have the lighter blue, so something like so. I'm just going to plug this directly into our base color that we have here. This is going to be our principled BSDF color that we're using. Let's see, let's use another principled BSDF color, and this is just going to be white. Let's remove saturation. Let's use a mix shader now. We're going to be shading between the white value here and then the blue value of the color, and then that's going to be on our iris matte that we already created. So now let's go ahead and just view that. we do want to have kind of these strands, these darker strands in our eyes that are kind of going outwards. We've already created this wavelet that we can see here. Move all this stuff that way. And then now let's go mix color. We're going to swap this in here. And using this effect here, we're basically going to try to get that darker value into the factor. So now if we go view that, you can see all those lines being created inside of here. It does weirdly not center both of these values, which would make sense because this is using UV and then this is using the non-UV aspect of stuff. So let's change the location. I'm going to duplicate everything here and then scale it up slightly. And then we're going to create a new material called outer eye. And then let's create a glass BSDF that is the outer eye. And then for settings on this, let's go down to the shadow settings. I believe we could turn shadow off for this guy. And for the eye itself, let's same thing. Colors from here. Change this to a little bit brighter of an eyeball. Then here, let's go ahead and now add in the black pupil. Just go up here and then set this to a 0. We're going to use another mix shader here. And this black pupil goes into the bottom of that using this FAC. Is it not cardinal? Is it linear? This eye is down here when it should be there because the center of this is here, which I think all stems from the fact that my coordinates are screwed up here. Oh, I could always use linear. Yeah, let's freaking use linear. Let's go. Let's go. Okay, so linear versus that linear, which is further out, which we're going to add a little bit of a blur on because this is driving me crazy. Also, let's use a subdivide surface. So that way this eye is actually correct. I might want to invert these options. This gets plugged into our value here, but let's use an invert node. We'll invert the color of it. Although, funny enough, I think these are swapped now. So this gets plugged into that one, and then this guy gets plugged into this one. Okay, I'm going to hear you out, okay? Use a radial gradient, so gradient texture with it set to radial. And then you can use a math node where we multiply. So math, multiply it. Multiply this value by 100. Okay? Then we're going to take that. After that, a sine. So we're going to use math. Set that to sine value. Sine. And then add 1. Let's see. Divide by 2. Take that divide by 2. And then for the multiply, you should multiply it by 2. And add another multiply with a rounded value to keep the whole thing perfect. Okay. Let's divide by 2. And then you round it. 2 pi? Oh. Multiply it by 2 pi. And I also screwed that up here. If this is supposed to be multiply. That's a me problem. Multiply. Okay, go into the gradient and change the vector coordinates. Oh, you're right. That's another thing I gotta do. Change that to object. You know, we don't need to do that. I feel like I'd be fine with this value here. And boom. So we've got our eye. We've got our center of our eye. And now we can change the scaling of this, right? The multiply can be increased and add more lines. Oh, I see. Okay. This multiply. Oh, that's cool. Okay, let's take this and then let's invert it. Invert this color. Now we've got ourselves a white value of the lines. And we can use this inside of our factor here, I believe. I will say we'll probably want to use a mixed color here, though, outside of this factor to be black in all the areas that the iris is not. Let's add in some additional lights just to brighten this thing up, because that's probably part of the issue that we're running into here. Turn off the specularity. There we go. So now we can duplicate this guy, scale it outwards, and use this as our outer eye. Let's go to our area light here, swap this to a smaller light. Invert the color on this guy. Okay, great. And then now let's use another diffuse texture, although we could use this emission also before this diffuse. So we'll use a mix shader node, basically be mixing the value of that plus the value of this emission from the value of this invert color. I get what's going on now. Perfect. So that's giving us the white values now, which is going to give us the blue values. This is fantastic. Things are starting to come together. Only the areas where the white is do I want to have these lines. Otherwise, put black there. We can clamp the result or whatever, and that's going to give us this. And inside of the eyes, I kind of want, she has like, again, these like sparkles everywhere. So I feel like we should have that inside of her eyes as well. So we'll just use another Voronoi texture, change the scale of this to be a lot larger, use a color ramp on this guy. Again, just change the scale of it to be quite a bit smaller. And this is where we can grab an emission or something like that. So let's do an emission shader. And again, we're only going to want this to exist in the areas that we have our masks. So we could just do the same thing we did before, you know? So duplicate this, place that up there, grab this gradient, place that there. And then we're going to use a mix color node all the way over here. And this mix color node, we're going to use this as a factor value. And then let's go ahead and view this real quick again. This is going to get placed into the B input. And then over here, we're just going to make this black. So that way we're only getting the sparkles in the area where her iris is. And with our emission here, let's just select the same color as this blue over here. And let's use a mix shader again. This time plugging that to the top, and then this over here into this emission value here, and then the factor can just get plugged from that spot up there. So now when we go view this, we should get nice lit up areas on her eyes in different spots. I want her eyes to feel a little more deep blue rather than right now it comes off as almost purple. So let's make sure we're staying away from the purple. The speckles in her eyes, we do want to increase the strength on those. We want to make the size smaller on them. Oh, that's great. And then, of course, we don't want them in the area where the black is also. So same thing we did earlier. So we're just going to duplicate. I believe this is what we're using here. So let's use another mix color. And then let's see, what is this doing? So black is going to be plugged in to the factor here. And then this can just be down to the B input, and then this can be black up there. I know this is getting confusing, guys. But yeah, then now you get that black kind of in the center there, kind of erasing the area, because like there's the speckles there, and then it's erasing that in the center. Kind of want this outer line now around the outside of her eye. You can do that pretty easily, I believe, by just looking at this object here, and we can take a math node, and we'll use a mix color node as well. And so we'll take this value here, we'll set this to 100, and then use a color ramp here. Or let's do this, the difference. Let's do difference. Take this value plugged into color ramp, this value plugged into the B, and if we go view it, it's not going to give us any result whatsoever. But as soon as we start to make a change here, it's actually going to create a matte in that changed area. So we're able to create kind of like an outline around an existing mask that we have. So let's go ahead and do that. Just kind of create like this rough outline here. And then let's use another color ramp just to sharpen up that edge. And then this line here, we've got this new mask that we created. We can actually use on our blue iris effect down there. So let's go view that real quick. So this is our overall eyeball that we have. And then let's use another diffuse, I think. And this diffuse is going to be of the darker portion of the eye. And then another mix shader. And then we're going to grab the FAC of that newly created mask that we created. You can see what it's doing there. And just make sure that this plugged into the shader at the bottom of that. I think, let's see, make that quite a bit thicker like so. I don't really want it to be that thick, honestly. Something like that should be good. Where's that whiter outer edge kind of coming from? Because that's the part I don't like. I kind of want this to extend all the way, and it's not. I need to basically just duplicate the values that we already have here. Let's set this to black, and then let's set this to white. And then change, if this is then plugged into that value, and this value gets plugged directly into the A, and then this value goes into the color ramp as well. That should give us better results slightly. There we go. And then we'll just tighten this up a little bit. Two things. First of all, I like how bright this eye gets because of this area light that I added, but I don't want anything else to like get brightened by it. So let's go to light linking, add new light here, and then we're just going to select eyes, drag that in. But this is the character that we have so far. I ended up getting the eyes to work. I ended up projecting the eyeball that we created onto this area in the angle that we needed it to be at in order for us to get it to work. As you can see, I fixed the eyes. I made some adjustments on the hair as well to get it to flow a little bit more like how her hair flows as the character. I just didn't want to do it on stream. I was like, this is something that like, it's boring. It's very particular. Let's see. If I go into edit mode on these guys here, you'll notice that I can just select like the I just kind of want to select. You see how we have like this vertice here? I can now fill in more memory spheres in like different areas. Let's see. Where's that at? So this is instances. Let's go to memories. I'm just going to turn off memories for myself real quick. But if we go into here, I'm going to just kind of duplicate, you know, these little spheres around. The idea being that like the more of these like laying around, just feel like she's in kind of like a messy environment. Let's do instanced orbs. Yeah, there we go. And then if we select these spheres here, I can kind of just like duplicate these around. I want to look at like, so I have this. I think we want some palettes laying back here. I think that would be fun to model real quick. I know enough about palettes, guys. I used palettes to build half my set. So I've got these guys down. All right. Let's see. Let's do that. Just bevel it up a little bit. We want to apply specifically the scale, not the transforms. Because if we apply that, then we can bevel things a little more evenly. Just duplicate that upwards. The cool thing about, you know, palettes is you can, you know, have them a little off. They don't have to be straight. They don't have to be perfect. There we go. Okay, that works. And then we'll take this whole thing. I was going to just duplicate this to the other side here, and I think that's my palette. So we take this. Let's grab this, move it over. We'll just line this guy up. We got ourselves some palettes laying in the background, and that just adds a little extra, like, you know, noise to the scene, I suppose. The real trick, by the way, with rendering this out is going to be rendering it in passes, because we're going to want to add in all of these like glow effects, and that's going to happen behind people. But we could render it as passes, or we could render it out with cryptomats and then use edge extend in order for us to be able to get the look of that going. On her, I want a little bit more light. I think that's the trick right now that I'm looking for. Is let's take this guy here. She's just a bit side lighty. I'm just going to point that on the front of her face, give her just a little bit more of a key light on her. Oh, that's already feeling quite a bit better. I might want a little bit more light from the top here, so let's add that in. I'm going to duplicate my area light that I have. We're just going to point that all the way up here and scale that all the way up. I might need to adjust this model because it's not giving me very much room. Let's add a cursor selected here. I'm going to just use this. If we can select this face now, I'm just going to scale on the 3D cursor backwards. That way we can create just a little bit of a lip. And with that, I can then grab this, just create a nice little edge. Nothing crazy, but it just gives us a nice little lip there. And so that way, if I point this light on it, I can get a little more brightness. That way it feels like the environment above is brighter. You know, I don't like these hairs. Not a fan. So we're going to make some adjustments to that. It's these hairs specifically here. Which ones are you? Are you this last one? You are. So if you select this, you can go into particle edit mode. Oh, interesting. Oh, because those are all children, aren't they? I feel like there's just not, it's not smooth enough. It feels too low poly. We gave Joy a haircut, guys. So it's these steps here. I imagine if we upped this, then we're going to get like a nice smoother, you know, curve that's going on. And then the second thing is if we go to children, I want to change the length here to like 0.3 of what it was. That might fix it. 0.6. Oh, not 6. 0.6. And then that also is going to make it smaller. And then the other thing is if we did set this to like the full size of 1, all we really need to do is change the shape of it as well. So if we go down to hair shape, we can change the diameter of the root to something like a 0.1. And that'll make it quite a bit smaller. So that way we get these like tiny thin hairs that are on her head. Now let's work on her arms. So we're going to save this. Let's go over here to the shader settings here. And then I'm going to just call this skin arm. And if we have our shader settings open here, this is our shader that we were using for the entirety of the face so far. We're going to go in and disable a few things, okay? So first of which, the lips. We don't need the lips, so we're going to get rid of the lips in the mouth and all that jazz. So if we get rid of that, should only give us, again, skin arm. We'll set that to 1. Or no, I guess we'll set that to nothing. And again, this is taking the lips here, and so you're going to throw that into this guy, and then let's just say 0. This is the makeup effects. We get rid of that, set that to 0. Great. So now we just have the skin shader. Now we can go through and clean up all these excess nodes. Honestly, we could probably have just plugged this directly into this, for instance, because we're not mixing this anymore. I'm just going to clean everything up here. Then this can get plugged into this guy, so we're not using that makeup effect. And then this guy can get plugged directly into this guy, because we're not using that makeup effect. We're not using any of this anymore. This is rosy cheeks. We don't need rosy cheeks, so we'll get rid of that. Boom, boom. We can take this, plug this directly into this guy. Get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. Lots of cleanup, guys. Just cleaning things up one by one. Move that all the way over there, and then now we only have our 2 different things here, which is the purple effect that we want, as well as the actual skin shader. So now, since we have this new material called skin arm, let's go ahead and select our other arm here, and we'll just go ahead and select skin arm for that as well. And that should just remove all of those stretch mark lines that we had, so we'll go ahead and save button there. I'm going to select specifically one of these guys. Just make these kind of like we're going to finish adding shaders on all of this, and then we'll work on the skin shader next after all that. So metal rings. This is a pretty straightforward material. Just a little metallic, pretty rough, a little bronzy. Yep, that works. Save. And we need this lovely pattern on this this package. We could just make it inside of like Photoshop or something like that, I'm sure. And we're going to go to... I like to do Polyhaven for textures. And we can find some cloth textures. Now what I like to do is drop these textures in, and I don't use the color. I only use the normals, and I use the roughness. So select this guy here, and we'll create this one, and this will be called bag fabric. And then again, we don't need this diffuse color. We only need the normals, the roughness. Drag both those guys in. And we can plug in the roughness onto our roughness, and then we can plug our normal into the normal. You want to do this as a normal map. So you're converting it from normals, from like RGB basically to normal space, and you're converting that all the way into that for this material. And for this guy, let's just assign our texture. Don't know why he's so dark. Wonder if we put these under character. Yeah, there we go. Because he wasn't being lit the same way the character was, because the character had their own light collection, basically. Now he's too bright, but that's all good. It's fine. We can live with that. But now we can adjust this base color to be whatever texture we want, and that gives us the ability to have a fabric material on whatever texture that we generate. So let's do this. Let's go find clip art of candy. I'm going to open up Photoshop. It's all good to go. Now let's just create a new custom texture, which will just be 1920 by 1920. That's all fine. I don't really care about any of this. We're going to adjust all of it later anyways. But inside of this Photoshop now, I've got this blank canvas set up. And we want to create kind of like this purplish texture now. So let's go ahead and just use the paint bucket. Find ourselves a nice color. A little more blue, I think. It's going to get darker in other areas. I feel like it should be a little more desaturated. So if we do something like this or that, that looks pretty good. Now we just need to make a pattern, basically. So using these lovely images that we just downloaded, let's just move this over here. Grab this guy. We got ourselves some pattern Jolly Ranchers or whatever. I'm going to use select color range, and we'll just select the white area. We basically just want to delete everything. Rasterize the image first. That's almost good. We'll do select color range, and we're going to increase this fuzziness to like the absolute most. Might just delete that guy, actually. Delete. We don't need a blue one. No blue ones for us. Make our own blue one. And now, if we just use this, we can kind of select each one of these and separate them by their own, you know, pattern. Do magic wand on this guy. We'll just select him. Rasterize the image first, and then delete. And then I feel like we need one more piece of candy. Just something different. A clip art, overlay specs, something magical is what we're going for here. Just go ahead and save this, honestly. Guys, we're just making up crap at this point. Okay, overlay that, and then we'll just use like something like screen. Use screen, make that really low, and that should work. You could also use the, just your paintbrush, and then just scale up the paintbrush, and we can get rid of some of these edge specks because we don't want it to see any clipped lines. We could take all of our different peppermint layers and all that crap, and then we can merge these together. So let's merge the layers together. And then if we kind of just like use some kind of like blending mode, I think that would probably be best. So now we go over into our rendered settings here. We're going to use an image texture, and we'll just hit open and find that same exact material for our assets, bag art, plug that into base color. And now using something like a texture mapping node, I'm going to just move this all back here and we can use object or UV, which works the best. And then we'll use value and then we'll just increase this to a higher value for the scale. Might scale it actually a little bit up. Let's do like a 3. Under our character, we're going to create a new collection and we'll call this main. Select this guy, this guy, this guy. And these are our arms that we basically created. And we're just going to move all of those under main. Okay, with this rope, let's go ahead and add in some materials. So first of all, rope's going to be like a rope. Booyah, done, right? Nope, not done. It's a little orangey though. Just going to take that down a notch. So I was going to try to use something with like the wave texture. Let's see, bands. We've got ourselves some rings. Haha! There we go, guys. I figured it out. There we go. You got yourself a rope texture. Now, you take this, and let's take this plus a bump node. Plug this into the strength. Plug this into the displacement. Plug this into the surface. And that's going to give you that. So then you go into here, and then you find the settings for your displacement is bump only. Swap this to displacement and bump. Oh, wow. Change the strength of that to be a lot smaller. Use math. Multiply. 0.01. Is this supposed to get plugged into distance? I think so. And then... that should work, but I might not have enough vertices. Yeah, it goes into... Oh, into height. You're right. Okay, you're right. I don't know what I'm thinking. Let's go into... So that's a curve. We're on to something here, guys. I need to convert this curve... Where's my Bezier curve? There it is. We're going to do object, convert. Where are you at? Convert to mesh. Take this whole thing and subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. Either way, now we take that and we take an RGB node and we take the value from this base color. And then we use a mix color node with that plugged into there and that plugged into there and this plugged into there. And then we swap these because they're backwards. And then you got yourself that. And then you can plug this guy all the way into the base color. And then if you view the base color, you're getting yourself a little something that doesn't look good. But it's all good because in the end of the day, life isn't about looking good. It's about having a good time. So let's go ahead and view our mat now. And then we're just going to make our thing thicker. And then... Now we go view that again, and that should look a little bit better. Like, you know, you feel a little less bad about yourself, and we're just gonna darken up the main rope. Like so, that's pretty good. Then we plug that back into displacement, and then you said trying to change the strength instead of the math because it's multiplying the normal outputs. Yes. I'm just gonna make that really small. I could do a normal map, then have this guy plug into normal instead. There we go. That kind of works. This needs to be multiplying by a negative number. Yeah, that kind of worked. Guys, that kind of worked. I guess that was the answer. So let's get that to plug into color. So that way we have a little bit more information. Although, actually, that kind of works. I would say let's get this color to plug into the color there. And then this guy, we just decrease the value a bit. So let's increase that up a little. Now we got some nice rope action going on in there. Lovely. Let's change the saturation now just to add a little more oomph to this rope. Let's change that to not go as dark now. Just got these wonderful, beautiful flowers on a green dress. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to take the dress that we have and let's go add a new material and call this dress. Guys, we're done. It's green and we're good. No. We're going to do the same thing with grabbing fabric. So we'll do our normal pass and a roughness pass. We plug the roughness into roughness, obviously. And then we go ahead and plug the normals over into our normal. But we have to convert it, of course, to our normal space. So using a normal map node. That's going to give us our lovely textures. The only thing to be concerned about at this point with this dress, I can't really see it too well, is how is the mapping going for like the roughness and stuff like that. So if we just, you know, viewed this guy... which doesn't have all that much roughness going on here, but if we use a color ramp, let's use generated, see what that looks like. Generated, it's going to look a little bit nicer for most of this, honestly. Yeah, let's use this generated texture coordinates. We'll go ahead and plug that into both the vectors of these guys here. Plug this guy directly into roughness now. And so now we've just got ourselves a regular green dress. But that's not good enough. We need our texture of her dress here. So let's go into this guy now. We'll hit new, create custom, and I'm going to make this a little bit larger of her texture. 4096 by 4096. Go ahead and create that. I like her color of her dress, and I don't want to have to futz with this, so we're just going to drag this image in, and then using the color picker tool, just select the nice middle green. Something like that. Now let's get ourselves a nice floral design. You know what we could do? We could cheat. What we could do is we have like this little section of her dress here. Or, one second. Joy from Inside Out. Let's grab this guy. I'm going to find a good section of it. And let's just select her. Oopsies. Select everything. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, boop, boop. Select all of that, guys. Select all the outside as well. It's all good. Okay, so now we got all that selected. The idea here is that if we select everything except for the areas that we want to keep, hit generate fill, generate, and it might continue the pattern design for us for everything else. The idea being that we're creating a pattern based off of an image of something that we already have, and that almost worked. So yeah, just select the areas that didn't work. Just continue your selections. Just keep it going. We're going to try to create like a flat design as much as possible. Realistically, we don't want these shadows if we can help it. So we're going to get rid of those in a second. Let's see. Let's go to filters. Is it other? Offset. We're just going to offset this guy the other direction. I don't want to rasterize it, I think. Now if we disable this, I think this layer is not going to be that big. Yeah. There we go. Perfect. Sorry. I was got a little distracted there for a second. What we're trying to do is create a seamless texture. So now we go into filter, other, and then select offset. And we're just going to offset this like a negative number, probably something like so. Should be good. Select this whole thing here, and then we just generate fill, generate. That's good. Take that, merge the layers, and then now we're going to go back into filter and then other offset. But this time we'll set that to 0, and then we'll set this to a negative 1700. Okay, so now we'll take this guy, we'll export this as a dress, we'll call this Joy Dress Art. And we'll just plug this in now. So this should be 100% seamless. Go into here, say image texture, open. I'm just going to add in a mapping node and we'll swap this to generated because we don't have a good UV of this. Although we can make our own UV. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but there you go. Now we've got ourselves our floral pattern on our dress. I think the only thing we're going to want to do is change the amount of this bump here to be something a little less. Let's go back over here. I'm going to find myself a nice good wooden texture. I'm going to create a new material. We'll call this wood planks and load these guys in. Okay, let's grab that. If I scale this on the Y, plug that in over here, and then get this guy to go into displacement. Okay, I'm gonna render this out with a couple different passes, and then that way we can try to achieve some of the glowy effects that we want. But I'm thinking that this is pretty good for a render out of Blender, and then we can kind of get everything else we want from here. So let's do that. See how long this render even takes. I'm going to want to enable, let's go over to our settings here. I'm going to want to enable, let's go to passes over here. Turn on cryptomats for objects and materials. And then let's see, we don't really need anything else. We don't need to turn on any of that stuff. Color management, we are just outputting this as scroll down towards Aces CG. It's at the very top of our list here. So let's select that. And then let's go over here from PNG. We'll do OpenEXR multi-layer. And then for color management, override it and make sure it says Aces CG as well. Let's go and open up the node compositor here and let's load in our thing. Open that guy and then let's shuffle this. I'm going to use cryptomats. And what we really want to do right now is I want to isolate our main person here from the background. So if we could do that real quick, let's grab her whole thing. And you know what? Let's grab this as well, just because it's all part of her, I guess. It's all good. We'll grab that, 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 and that. Probably want to grab her like glowiness as well, because we do have something there. But now that's going to give us an alpha mask basically of just her. And if I use a merge node, we're going to isolate her basically. Let's do it this way. If we do over, we can use stencil. And then, oh, that's right, I'm erasing. What am I thinking? My brain is just broken here. I'll just use an invert node. There we go. Now we got our person. And then we'll use another merge node here. Use the B input. And if we just use this A here, we'll go select the regular cryptomat. We don't need to invert this guy. This should then use the stencil as well. We're just going to move all of that down over here. And then we'll just add in a dot and a merge node. I kind of want to add in a nice little glow. So we have her alpha here, right? And what we can do is we can use a constant. I'm going to actually do this real quick. This is going to save us a lot of time later. Just going to change our project settings here to HD 1920 by 1080, which is the same as our photo. And so now if we go ahead and add in a constant, we can use a color picker. I probably actually really like this color here. Although, I mean, honestly, we could just go in, add in a nice blue glow and a nice merge node from our cryptomat, or the invert of our cryptomat. So that way we've got this guy. Is that because this? So if I do, wait a second, RGBA. There we go. Haha, that fixed it right there. Wow. Who knew that if I actually just read like the node stuff, I would actually come up with a solution. Okay, so we've got this guy. Let's do that. We'll hide the input for that as well. Okay, so we've got her here, and then we're going to behind that want the blur. So let's just go ahead into this guy. Let's look at this real quick, and we just add the blur. Then if we add in a merge node, just change the alpha of that. There we go. So now we've got our glow on the outside of her. I'm probably thinking that with this constant, we can go into here. We can adjust the alpha now of this. I guess that doesn't really do it that easily, does it? Well, I guess we can do it this way. It's always my favorite way of doing it, which is just super easy. Just add a merge node in, adjust the mix of it. There you go. Voila. Now you got yourself a nice glow around your character. So now we go back into here. We've got this nice glow. We're probably going to adjust the amount of blur here to be a little bit less. Our background here, or actually still our foreground. Let's work on this a little bit. So we've got our character. This is her. We want to do some color manipulation on these things. So let's do that. We got ourselves a nice glow. Change the overall glow on this thing. Change the saturation on this to be a higher saturation. Let's change the brightness to be a little bit lower. And then overall, let's just mix this a little bit better. Let's change the saturation to be a little bit higher even. And then let's do effect only on this. So click on that guy and then hit effect only. Just change this tolerance here. And let's use a merge node now and then merge that back over on top of it. And we're going to use a screen value. And then this guy, we can use the mix node to control how much we really want. We're going to create a cryptomat. Cryptomat just gets plugged all the way over into our main guy. Hide that input. But this cryptomat will just use the eyes here and the teeth. Let's do that. And then we'll take this and use a mask to invert the selection on that. So there you go. And that's going to make it so that our eyes really pop, but the skin works really nicely here. Okay, great. Next up, let's add another cryptomat in. Same difference here. And let's go view this real quick. We're going to want maybe, yeah, let's select, oopsies. Select the arms as well for right now. Actually, you know what? Clear this. We don't want objects, we want materials. And let's select these guys. Okay, so just the skin. So we want to dial in the color of the skin that we have. So use a grade node here. And we're just going to plug this into the mask option now. And then now we could just really dial this in, you know? So I'm going to use the white point here to... Looks pretty good. I like that. Let's use a saturation node now. Plus that cryptomat. Just boost that saturation a little bit. I don't like it when it goes too yellow, you know? Like it feels too green or something like that. It's feeling about right to me. I think her arms are going to need a little more love, you know? But it feels a little too green. Yeah, it looks good, guys. I like that. It's got a nice fleshy skin to it. One other thing that we're going to want to adjust is that the outside edges of this guy need to have a little bit of an edge blur, I think. Let's just go into here and feather that out a little bit. Just increase the brightness as well. That kind of works. I just don't like it for the hair. So let's use another cryptomat. Select this to the top. And yeah, let's go into here. And then for the cryptomat, set that to material again. And then we're going to use the hair here as our mask that we want. So we'll just go to, oop. I'll just say invert this because we don't want the hair. We don't want the hair, okay? Yeah, let's add a blur node into here. Blur that pretty high. Erode fast. Let's see. Increase the size of that. So now it's only going to blur these areas on this image that are not the hair. Add in a virtual lens. You're gonna love me, Hasselhoff. I added your virtual lens. So let's move this mask out a little bit further, give ourselves some more room. Let's use another grade node here. And then we're gonna find ourselves a cryptomat. And let's see. Yeah, let's use this cryptomat specifically of just the hair. So let's just, go view that real quick. Select that to material. And then select the hair. Got ourselves a nice mask here. So now this guy, we can darken up a little bit to match her eyes a little more. Love it. Let's merge this back on top of this guy here. Let's do that. And then I'm going to add in a grade node. I don't want to use that guy for the vignette. I think it's like, I'm just going to do it myself. So with vignettes, it's really interesting. So I work at a finishing facility and they always use like a perfect vignette for like their shapes. And I really like it when you don't have, like, if it has like a little bit of a shape to it. I feel like you can feel that in the vignette. I love it when I do stuff like this where it has like this kind of like on guard, off guard like shape to it where, it's not exactly perfect. Like it has like a bit of a feeling to it. That to me, I just feels so natural and realistic. But yeah, so we'll just use this blur node here and then let's just invert this guy. Go over to our grade node here and then we just darken up the edges. The only other thing that I kind of want to do before all of this is let's use a lens distortion node. Just increase the distortion just by ever so slight. And then we use that as a redistort. That just gives us a nice little distortion to our image. And then with our background, let's just do a bit of treatment on our background here, okay? So let's use like a nice little glow. I like to just throw a little glow on things. We'll use effect only. I'll just go view that real quick. Change our tolerance to, something like this. And then if we just, change the amount of blur to something like that, merge that back on top of our main image, do a nice little screen, I think. And then we'll just mix that back in so that way it's not too much blur. We just want to add like a nice little pop. Her teeth, just nitpicking now, but I do like to nitpick, okay? I don't think it's a bad thing to nitpick either, Like I feel like you're allowed to nitpick stuff. I don't know why I thought it was going to be easy, but I was like, you know what? Let's do it. And you know what? It was fun. Low disk space, guys. I'm running out of disk space here. Just going to brighten up her teeth a little bit because I think her teeth needs to be a little bit whiter. Beautiful. Just the teeth. Let's lift that up. Grade node. Give ourselves some more room. That works. It's funny. I actually brightened it, I think, more than I was initially planning on it. I think that's a bit much grain, though. Let's make some adjustments here. So we have a preset. Let's do Fuji 4K. Nah. I like a Kodak. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I like that. You know what? I like it. I like it. What can I say? What can I say, guys? It turned out pretty good. Thanks to the wonderful Hasselhoff for sending us these arms because that was a nightmare and a half. But, overall, like, I think the rest of the image turned out. Everything turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, guys. I think this is going to be the final image, the final render, the final push, guys, to get that done was this. However, if you guys want these project files, you can download the Nuke script as well as the Blender project and everything from Patreon. That'll be uploaded here as soon as I end the live stream. And I will see you guys next week with a new render, with a new visual effects shot. Peace out, guys. You guys have a good one.